In this video, you will learn how to use the Applied Biosystems Step 1 Plus Thermocycler software. To set up the PCR reaction, please see the previous videos in this series. Turn on the thermocycler by the power button at the left rear of the instrument. It will take a few minutes to boot up, and the software needs to be able to connect and communicate with the machine. To begin, select the Step 1 Plus icon on the desktop. A login screen will appear. Leave it as is so you can access past data if necessary. Click OK. A blue screen will now appear that will detail the startup process. When all systems are go, you'll be brought to the software's home screen. To program an experiment, choose Advanced Setup in the center of the leftmost column. You will be brought to the Experimental Properties tab. Enter the experiment name. You do not need a barcode or other identifying information. First, select Step 1 Plus 96 wells. In the second box, select delta-delta CT quantitation. In the third box, select Cyber Green Dye as the target sequence. Lastly, make sure you have fast selected for the ramp speed. When you have completed setting the experiment parameters, select Plate Setup in the left-hand menu. There are two tabs in this menu: Define Targets and Assign Targets. You will start in the Define tab. In the Define Targets box, name your first target or gene. Select a color for the gene. It is often helpful to match colors with the plate setup that you already prepared. You can leave the middle two pull-down options as default. Click Add New Target and repeat the naming and color coding process for all of the genes that you are using. Here we are using 3: 18S RNA, DUSP2, and IL6. Now, look to the right at the Define Samples box. Name your first sample and select a color for it. Click Add New Sample and repeat the naming and color coding process for each sample you have. Here we have 6 samples: A through D, a PCR blank, and an RT blank. When you have properly named all of the targets and samples, switch the tab to Assign Targets and Samples near the top of the screen. Here you will need to set the plate layout. To the left, you will see the targets and samples that you have set in the previous screen, and to the right, a blank plate. Copy the plate setup that you created to use as a guide while pipetting the plate. If you have assigned the same colors in the computer as you did on the sheet, it'll be easy to make sure you have entered everything correctly. Assign each well both a target and a sample. You do not need to specifically designate empty wells, just leave them blank. For the PCR and RT blanks, make sure to mark them as negative control instead of the default unknown. You can do this in the rightmost column of the Assign Targets box, located on your screen at the top left. When you are finished entering in the plate data, look at the bottom 2 boxes on the left. Select Relative Quantitation Setting and select Dye to use. Make sure that your relative quantitation standard is the housekeeping gene and whatever your control sample is. The computer puts in the settings from the top left-hand well. In this case, that is our internal quantitation standard. This is the default, but depending on how you set up the plate, this may not always be the case. In the dye box, the selected dye should be rocks. Again, this is the default, but always verify that you have the proper settings. When you have finished designating all of the plate information, select Run Method in the left-hand menu. You will be brought to a screen that graphically displays the run method that was last used. If you're using a standard method, click on Open Run Method in the blue bar above the graph. A window will open with saved run methods. Select PCR with Melt and click OK. A dialog box will open asking if you want to overwrite the displayed run method. Select Yes to continue. Make sure that the number of cycles box under the signaling stage header is set to 40. Now, go to Run in the left-hand menu. When an experiment is running, this is the screen where you will be able to track the progress. Open the drawer of the thermocycler. Place the plate in the tray so that the wells line up with the plate setup you programmed into the computer. A1 is marked on both the tray and the plate. Make sure that the tray is properly sitting in all of the wells. Close the tray and turn back to the computer. Click on the blue Start Run button. A dialog box will now appear, allowing you to save your run. Name your file with your initials, date, and the genes being tested. Click Save. The computer will now resume sending the experiment to the instrument. You will hear a creaking noise as the thermocycler heats up the tray and lifts it into position. Do not be alarmed. This is normal. The machine will continue to make grating sounds as it cycles through the program. If for some reason the tray does not lift up into position, click Abort Run. You can do this directly on the thermocycler at the bottom right or on the computer where the Start Run button was located. You do not need to stay with the machine while it runs the program. There is a timer on the screen. Look at the timer and determine when you need to come back to the lab to turn the machine off and analyze the data. You will know that all processes are finished when the tray lowers and you can once again see the blue stripe. Do not try to open the tray unless the stripe is visible. To learn how to analyze data and troubleshoot the PCR process, please continue to the next video.